Hey, so we want our artwork to have distance. We want the illusion of space, and we do that with perspective. Check it out. I'm now further away, and that illusion is created with linear perspective. You know what? These guys now are probably a little too violent these days for cartoons. But the artists, Charles Jones, and several others that worked on these cartoons created perspective. Okay, there's always a strong horizon line in all of these cartoons. So the first part of this video, you can follow along. You just need really a piece of paper and a pencil. If you have a ruler and eraser, that's great. You'll definitely want that for the latter part of this. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is going to be in real time, so you can follow along with me step by step. I am now drawing in the horizon line. Horizon line separates the sky from the land. That point is the vanishing point. Very, very important. Okay, the next step, you're going to want to draw a square. And you can freehand draw the square, or you can use a ruler and pause this if you'd like. Lines going back to the vanishing point. Okay, those are your perspective lines going back. And now what it looks like is this really long shape going back to the horizon. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing in my parallel and perpendicular lines to close off the shape. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to shade it in. Okay, that way you can now see there is a box going back to that vanishing point. So let's practice this a little more. We're going to go ahead and draw in another shape. Notice that it's smaller. That's because it's further back towards the horizon line. And again, I'm drawing to the vanishing point. And we're going to do this a couple times. I want us to get some practice drawing to the vanishing point. Sometimes we forget that we need to draw from each corner going back. And you know, it'll look like there is no top to our shape. All right, there's the next shape. I'm just doing a little erasing here too. But again, you don't need to erase for this exercise. This is purely an exercise. Your sketchbook pages don't have to look perfect. Okay, so now I'm speeding up just a little bit, but I wanted to show you that you can use perspective for something that's up in the sky too. So if we wanted something hovering, what's to say another block or a brick? So we have another brick up in the sky. And again, everything's going back to that one vanishing point. So this is something that is a little trickier. Notice what is different about this. This rectangle is doing something different. It is going above the horizon line and below the horizon line. So it's going to look different. We are now only going to see two sides of this shape, of this block. And we could call it a building because it kind of looks like a building, but it could be a block too. I'm just shading it in. And typically we would erase away that horizon line because it's opaque. Now those little hash marks, I'm adding those in. Those represent windows because I've now decided we're going to transform this into a building. And why don't you try that also? So put in some little hash marks on that corner and draw lines going back to your vanishing point. Your windows should go back to the vanishing point, at least on one side in 1 point perspective. All right, practicing drawing another building back in the distance that's sitting up a little bit higher, a floating or levitating building. Those are always a lot of fun to make, and I actually do a surrealism project in my class where we actually practice levitation. So here's something that's going to challenge you, and I want you to try this. You're going to try to draw a park bench. And yeah, this is just going to look like a concrete park bench. I'm loosely sketching it in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this is a sketch. It's not something that we're going to hang on the wall, or maybe you will, or put it on your fridge or something. So now that we have the shape of the park bench, we want to put it in perspective. So you can see I'm loosely and lightly sketching going back towards the vanishing point. So you'll never escape that vanishing point. It's always there, and you're always going to be drawing to it. Even that bottom edge, you've got to draw going back towards the vanishing point. Adding the back edges in, I've sped it up a little bit just for time's sake. Forgot to add the top in, adding that in. And we have our three-dimensional park bench. Let's look at the history of perspective. That means we'll look at a Renaissance artist. That means a really old Italian guy. We are going to focus on linear perspective. The artist that receives credit for linear perspective, Filippo Brunelleschi. Wow, it's pretty empty here. Again, look back at the street behind me. That is perspective. It goes way back there, and those buildings are really tall, but that's an illusion as everything is vanishing towards that horizon line, okay? And that point behind me, that is called the vanishing point. Let's start another drawing. This one's gonna be a cityscape. So I'm starting off with my horizon line. Now I'm adding in my vanishing point. Two of the most important things for this drawing to actually look good. Maybe I should just stop now before I mess it up. Next step, start adding in the shapes of my buildings. So 1 point perspective. Remember, you're adding in just one side at a time. So you're adding in that initial shape, rectangles and squares. I recommend starting with simple shapes like that to get started. And if you could piece together 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 buildings overlapping one another, that's a great start. And then try this again and do even more buildings. But as you can see, I'm drawing to my vanishing point. I'm keeping it simple. I'm stacking some buildings, but nothing too crazy. Again, everything is being drawn to my vanishing point. If you're interested in how to draw that stacked building, let me know. Maybe I can create a tutorial on that too. You can see though, with the buildings that are in the background, you can't see everything. They're being overlapped. The sidewalks, you probably will need a sharp pencil or a mechanical pencil to add those in, but you can see I added in some sidewalks around the building. You probably need sidewalks in your city, but that's really up to you. You get to decide when you create a city. You're the architect. Do something wild and crazy that maybe we'll see in the future. Maybe cities will change at some point. So I'm adding in the top to this building. This is a little different. You'll notice I added a vanishing point up there to add that little kind of pyramid shape at the top. At this point, I decided I was a little tired with buildings, so I started to put in like a elevated walkway, or maybe it's even a train stop. And here's the cat shaking the camera. The cat decided that I should stop for a while, so I actually did stop recording, and then I came back and added a few lines. Now the building on the left has little ridges to it. That is a more complicated approach, but you can see everything is being drawn to the vanishing point. And speaking of what else can you draw using a vanishing point, I'm going to get out some examples of stuff I've drawn in class for students in the past. So this is an example of a warm-up for surrealism. You can see it has the levitating blocks and buildings. I like that color blue. We were talking about bridges and elevated walkways and using a vanishing point. You can see there's my vanishing point right there. And everything's getting bigger. Drawing a bridge was actually a lot of fun. This drawing was actually one of the first drawings I ever did when I started teaching middle school. And you can see it has all kinds of fun little things in it. But there's a vanishing point all the way back there on the horizon. And then there's a second one because this actually has one building drawn in 2-point perspective. But that's going to be another video. So you guys just keep drawing, keep practicing, try this out, and I know you will get better at art.